Hello friends, I'm glad you've joined me for the reading of another Cinderella folktale. So, as we add this one, Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters, to the other versions of Cinderella folktales that we've already read, one of the things we can think about is that we know there are so many different versions because of their genre, because all of these books are folktales, and we know that a folktale is a kind of fiction, meaning that it comes from the author's heart and brain, but what makes a folktale a little bit different is that it's a story that's been told lots of times over and over again by many different people, a lot of times with words, until sometimes some authors decided to write that story down with words, or illustrators decided to add art or photographs to that story. So, Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters is another folktale, okay? And there's one good reader word that we're going to talk about that will help us better understand the story, and it is I say, you say, considerate. Considerate. Let's tap that on our nose. Ready, set, tap. Considerate. Let's blink it. Considerate. Always count. Considerate. How many parts? 4 parts to the word considerate. And considerate just means that you're kind to other people's feelings, that you think and notice about other people's hearts and brains as well as your own. So, before we begin the story, let's check in on the front cover. And I can notice some things about the identity of the main character who's illustrated on the front cover. I notice that her gender identity is a girl. I notice that her race identity is black, and I also know because the author says right at the beginning that her language identity is Shona. The author has gone ahead and translated most of the language in this book into English, but some of the words you'll hear will be in a different language, which is Nyasha's language identity of Shona. So let's begin. Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters by John Steptoe. A long time ago, in a certain place, a small village lay across a river in a half-day's journey from a city where a great king lived. A man named Mufaro lived in this village with his 2 daughters, who were called Manyara and Nyasha. Everyone agreed that Manyara and Nyasha were both very wonderful. Manyara was almost always in a bad temper, that means in the red. She teased her sister whenever their father's back was turned, and she had been heard to say, "Someday, Nyasha, I will be a queen, and you will be a servant in my household." It's a very unkind thing that Nyasha said, that Manyara said to Nyasha. Nyasha was sad that Manyara felt this way, but she ignored her sister's words and went about her chores. Nyasha kept a small plot of land on which she grew millet, that's a kind of grain, sunflowers, yams, that's like a potato, and vegetables. She sang as she worked. Notice that Nyasha has chosen to ignore her sister Manyara's red words as a way to solve that problem. One day, Nyasha noticed a small garden snake resting beneath a yam vine. "Good day, little Nyoka," she called him. That is the Shona word for snake. "You are welcome here. You will keep away any creatures who might spoil my vegetables." She bent forward, gave the little snake a loving pat on the head, and then returned to her work. Notice she wasn't frightened by that snake. She met it in a calm, green way and spoke to it in a green way, too. Now, early one morning, a messenger from the city arrived. The great king wanted a queen for his people. "The most worthy daughters in the land are invited to appear before the king, and one will become queen," the messenger proclaimed. Mufaro called his daughters Manyara and Nyasha to him. "It would be a great honor to have one of you chosen," he said. "Prepare yourselves to journey to the city. We will leave tomorrow when the sun rises." I wonder if one of them will become queen. That night, when everyone was asleep, Manyara stole quietly out of the village. She'd never been in the forest at night before, and she was frightened, but her greed to be the first to appear before the king drove her on. In her hurry, she almost stumbled over a small boy who suddenly appeared standing in the path. I noticed that Manyara left before everybody else, including her father Mufaro and her other sister Nyasha. She wanted to be the first one there because she thought if she was first, she would be chosen. I wonder if that's true. "Please," said the boy who was in her way, "I am hungry. Will you give me something to eat?" "I have only brought enough food for myself," Manyara replied. "But please," said the boy, "I am so very hungry." "Out of my way, boy. Tomorrow I will become your queen. How dare you stand in my path?" You can see the illustrator has shown us that Manyara is speaking to him in a red way. She's chosen not to share any of her food. Nyasha woke at the first light of dawn. As she put on her finest garments, she thought how her life might be changed forever beyond this day. I'd much prefer to live here in the village, she admitted to herself. I'd hate to leave the village and never see my father or sing to that little nyoka again. Her thoughts were interrupted by loud shouts and a commotion from the wedding party assembled outside. Manyara was missing. They didn't know that her sister Manyara had left before everybody else to try to be first. Everyone bustled about, searching and calling for her. When they found her footprints on the path that led to the city, they figured she must have already left and decided to go on as planned. They were deep in the forest when Nyasha saw a small boy standing by the side of the path. You must be hungry, she said, and she handed him a yam that she had brought with her for her lunch. The boy smiled and disappeared as quietly as he had come. I noticed that Nyasha chose to react differently to the hungry small boy than her sister Manyara did. Even before he asked or spoke to her, she offered some of her food because she noticed that he was hungry. She was being considerate. Nyasha ran ahead and topped the rise before the others could catch up with her. She stood transfixed at the first sight of the city. That means she thought that it looked incredible. Oh, my father, she called, a great spirit must stand guard here. Just look at what lies before us. I never in all my life dreamed there could be anything so beautiful. Arm in arm, Nyasha and her father descended the hill, crossed the river, and approached the city gate. Just as they entered through the great doors, the air was rent by piercing cries. That means someone was screaming. And Manyara ran wildly out of the chamber at the center of the enclosure. When she saw her sister, she fell on her, sobbing. Do not go to the king, my sister. Oh, please, father, do not let her go, she cried hysterically. That means she was in the red, very upset. There's a snake in there. He said that he knew all my faults and that I displeased him. He would have swallowed me alive if I had not run. Oh, my sister, please do not go inside that place. It frightened Nyasha to see her sister so upset, but leaving her father to comfort Manyara, she bravely made her way to the chamber and opened the door. I wonder if that same fearful snake will be in there. On the seat of the great chief's stool lay the little garden snake. Nyasha laughed with relief and joy, for she could not be afraid of him. My little friend, she exclaimed, it's such a pleasure to see you. But why are you here? I was wondering the same thing. How did a garden snake from her garden way far away in the village get to be in the king's chamber? I am the king, Nayoka replied. And there, before Nyasha's eyes, the garden snake changed shape. Wow, changed into a person, the king. I am the king. I am also the hungry boy with whom you shared a yam in the forest. But you know me best as Nayoka, because I have been all of these to you. I know you to be the most worthy daughter in the land. It would make me very happy if you would be the queen of our people. And so it was that long time ago, Nyasha agreed to be queen. Her father, Mufaro, proclaimed to all who would hear him that he was the happiest father in all the land, for he was blessed with 2 worthy daughters, Nyasha, the queen, and Manyara, a servant in the queen's household. And there is a final page, my friends, with no words but an illustration that shows our characters and what happens after the ending. So I have a good reader question for you, and the good reader question is this. Why did Nyasha give the boy a yam? She had brought that for her lunch. Why did Nyasha give the boy in the forest a yam? Think about that. Knowing that you'll use evidence to support your answer, Nyasha gave the boy a yam because, and I knew that when the author wrote or the illustrator drew. And if you're able, pause this video and discuss, why did Nyasha give the boy in the forest a yam? Great. That conversation will definitely help you be a better reader, and you'll know that you answered it if you used evidence, saying, I know that because the author wrote or the illustrator drew. Now, my answer is, Nyasha gave the boy a yam because he was hungry and she was considerate. And I know that because the illustrator drew her solving red problems in green rays on lots of other pages, too. She'd ignored her sister's red words. She talked to the snake in her garden in a kind way. The illustrator showed me all those things, so it makes sense that she would be considerate of the boy's feelings and give him the yam that she had brought with her to lunch. So, I wonder what you discussed about why Nyasha gave the boy a yam. So we'll end today with a menu of 2 choices that you can do to extend your good reader thinking about Mufaro's beautiful daughters. So there's 2 things you can do. The first thing I would like you to do one day is to retell this story using all the parts of a Cinderella folktale. That there's a main character, the villain, the fairy godmother, or what the character with magic was, what event or ball or party there was, what got lost, although I'm not sure if there was one in this story. You'll have to check and see. How the problem got solved, and what the happy ending was. Now, on another day, you can listen to the story again or do a Venn diagram as well, where you compare Mufaro's beautiful daughters with one of the other versions of Cinderella that we've read, as we've read many at this point. So, there's 2 activities you can do. One today, one another day, both one day, really whatever works for you and your brain. But they are a retell and a Venn diagram of Mufaro's beautiful daughters.